The great unmasking continues, and I am loving every second of it. Sam Seder went on Briahna Joy Gray's show Bad Faith to debate her on Forced to Vote. We're going to break that down here in this video, but first, please make sure you like this video, share this video, and subscribe to this channel so you can help independent media grow. So the reason why I say I'm loving every second of the great unmasking is because these people on independent media on YouTube with huge platforms make endless excuses about why we need to vote for the Democratic Party over and over again, even though the Democratic Party consistently denies people their basic needs because they take corporate money, and so they side with corporations. And now we have politicians who don't take corporate money, but then they side with corporate Democrats. And if they're siding with corporate Democrats, they're siding with corporations. So as long as there's no pressure from us, the people, on these politicians so that they do the things that they ran on doing, then they're not going to fight. And that's what's been proven here with how Ilhan Omar, AOC, Cori Bush, Rashida Tlaib, Jamal Bowman, Ayanna Pressley all voted for Nancy Pelosi without any pressure at all, without getting anything in return, because they're not really fighters. There's no sense of urgency for them. They have government health care. And that's a common pattern that we see from people who were against forced to vote and are still against forced to vote, because they have government health care. They're well off, they're rich, they're wealthy. They don't have that sense of urgency. There's other people who do have that sense of urgency. They've had family members, or they personally have experienced it, or have seen other people that are suffering, who went through a crisis, went through being in debt, went through a family member dying from lack of health care. And there's thousands upon thousands of Americans that die every year because they didn't have access to health care. In the richest country that the world has ever seen, it can take care of its citizens. So I just want to say that Briahna Joy Gray destroyed Sam Seder in that debate. Sam Seder could not go 1 second in his argument without bringing up Jimmy Dore. Jimmy Dore is making this toxic. He's making this toxic because he's making this about us being against the squad, like these politicians, for not withholding their vote from Nancy Pelosi to put Medicare for all up for a vote. And Sam Seder, I mean, that is the point. Like, if they're not going to do that, then that shows that they're not on our side, they're not really fighting for us. And we need to feel that urgency to put pressure on them, because there's people out there who are suffering who can't wait. But you're saying because Jimmy Dore is making this about him, and he's making us dislike these politicians. Why are you spending your time defending these politicians? Like, what have these politicians done for working class people other than give us platitudes? Like something, like systemically, they can have good bills here and there, but when it's something like Medicare for all, something like ending regime change wars, like ending U.S. imperialism, like fighting for that, these politicians won't do that, because the healthcare system that we have and our imperialistic system that we have on our foreign policy is what maintains these corporations that fund these politicians. And then the ones that don't take corporate money are afraid to challenge them because they're afraid to lose their career, or they're afraid to be outcasts in that circle in DC. And to that I say, screw that. Like, you should be worried about us. We are the voters. We're the ones that put you there. We're the ones that are going to have your back if you stand up for us. But Sam Seder doesn't see that. And I'm really glad that Briahna Joy Gray called him out on that. And I'm going to show you a clip from that debate that really shows how Briahna Joy Gray just had it with Sam Seder, distracting from these millions of people suffering by talking about Jimmy Dore.
You should look at the clip. You should watch the clip.
So I don't want to talk about stuff that is not germane to this issue and is not being represented on the book.
You asked me why I didn't get involved, and I'm telling you.
That is fair. We are all very clear that you personally don't think that Jimmy Dore is a worthwhile vessel for this. You think that it's worth throwing away.
I think he was using it in a destructive way,
right.
and that
Jimmy Dore was using it in the destructive way, and it tainted it. So, what I'm saying, and I hear you. I think that everyone understands your point of view.
I think the argument that you're having with everybody about Jimmy Dore is proof of my that he tainted.
I'm trying desperately, can I tell you, to stop talking about Jimmy Dore, because 15 million people lost their health insurance this past year, and I can't get you to focus on that issue for more than 5 minutes.
Hey, no, because you want. Listen, you should look.
I'm so glad she called him out on that shit, because Sam Seder has video after video after video after video talking about Jimmy Dore, and then all these people that watch Sam Seder or watch TYT call Jimmy Dore toxic for calling out politicians. But meanwhile, Sam Seder is spending most of his time attacking a independent journalist who he has disagreements with on strategy, which are about holding politicians accountable. Like, you're going after the wrong people. You're supposed, like, if you call yourself like a leftist, you're supposed to be attacking the power. The politicians are the ones that have the power. If they're not doing the things that we need, if they're not doing the things that need to be done so that our basic needs are met, then you need to hold them accountable for that, because they're not doing their job as public servants. Otherwise, you're just an ass kisser. All right, you're just an ass kisser who's letting these people get away with that because, I don't know, I guess you're fine, like you're well off. There's no sense of urgency for you, but there's a sense of urgency for us. So because you don't have that sense of urgency, you have a major blind spot, and that major blind spot that you have will lead to the misguidance of thousands of people who watch your channel. So now tell, like, what are we supposed to do when politicians aren't doing their job? Initially, Sam Seder was agreeing with this. He was saying that this is a great opportunity for Democrats to, withhold their vote from Nancy Pelosi so that we can get a progressive policy passed, which was something that was a major platform for Bernie Sanders. Like, this was the number one issue for a lot of progressives and independent media, like Mike Figueredo, like Kyle Kalinske, like David Dole, some of the people who I just mentioned were for forced vote. Sam Seder was also for the forced vote initially, but again, he went against it just because Jimmy Dore was he was claiming that Jimmy Dore is making it about going after politicians. I mean, that is part of it. That's why it's called forced the vote. We are forcing the politicians to get the vote on the floor. You think the politicians will listen to you if we're just nice and we're like, yeah, I support you, and I'll still vote for you? Then they don't feel like their career is on the line. You give up your leverage there. Like, politicians need to feel like they're gonna lose their seat if they don't do the things that we ask them to do. And so by being nice to them and kissing their ass, they don't feel like they need to do anything. They'll feel like, oh, as long as they keep pandering and throwing all these like one sentence tweets about policies that I'm for, but I'm not actually fighting for, like just putting Medicare for all, period, Green New Deal, period, defund the police, period, but then never actually fighting for those issues, people are still, they're going to be like, people are going to still going to vote for me. They're still going to support me. No, like, we have to make them feel threatened in terms of them losing their seat. Otherwise, they're not going to get that sense of urgency to do the things that we need them to do. Another thing that Sam Seder was saying in that debate was that, oh, like, if we don't get Nancy Pelosi, we're going to get Kevin McCarthy. That's been debunked already. If Nancy Pelosi, if they withhold their vote from Nancy Pelosi, like these 15 Democrats who ran on Medicare for all, or at least some of them, if they withhold their vote and Nancy Pelosi doesn't win, then it just goes back to the House. Again, the House is majority Democrat, and then they vote again. And then the same condition applies. No vote for anyone unless they put Medicare for all up for a vote. Same condition. So Nancy Pelosi, we can vote for you. Like, we didn't vote for you the first time, but we'll vote for you if you agree to put Medicare for all up for a vote. If not, we're going to put somebody up who will put it up for a vote. Kevin McCarthy's not going to put it up for a vote, so we're going to withhold our vote from him too. And we have the majority, like the Democrats, we have the majority. We're not going to vote for Kevin McCarthy. But AOC and all of them revealed that they're ass kissers for Nancy Pelosi and the establishment, and thus corporations. No matter how indirectly you see it, if they're ass kissing Nancy Pelosi, who ass kisses corporations, they're ass kissing corporations. Then there was another point in the debate where Sam Seder was saying that, oh, that if it fails, then it might ruin our chances of getting it passed in the future. No, like the urgency will not go away. The urgency for Medicare for all will not go away. People are still going to be asking for it during the time in which even the majority of Republicans support it. The majority of the country wants Medicare for all. And if people don't vote for it, that's going to look horrible on them in history. Like, you're not going to vote for Medicare for all and in the middle of a pandemic. It's going to look horrible. If Joe Biden vetoes Medicare for all like he said he was going to do, that's going to look horrible on him throughout history. There's going to be major backlash. And here's like what he's saying. Oh, because it's going to fail, then we shouldn't fight for it. Can you imagine, like, throughout history, if that was the case, we wouldn't have anything. We would still, like, we would all be slaves to a king if we never fought for anything. Like, oh, it's not realistic to get slavery banned. It's just not realistic. So right now, we have to wait. We have to wait so that, we get some politicians who are for it. Like, are you kidding me? You're saying we shouldn't fight? We shouldn't be doing anything until we get in, like just to sit around and hope for a savior to come save us? Nobody is going to save you other than yourself. And if you're not fighting for that, other people who want to vote, run for Congress or whatever, their consciousness won't be raised because they don't see you express that sense of urgency. You're saying, like, there's no way that it's going to pass. Like, as far as I know, it doesn't seem like Sam Seder is a fortune teller or anything, so he can't say that for sure. We can't say that for sure. Like, we can't objectively say that. And it doesn't mean, just because it seems unrealistic, doesn't mean we're not going to fight for it. So I want people to remember this. So at Michael Tanuvasa shared this historical fact a couple weeks back. In 1918, Representative Janet Rankins opened floor debate on women's voting rights. It failed to pass Senate, but convinced President Wilson to endorse it. In 1919, the 19th Amendment passed with a narrow margin. Women's voting rights won out. And I'll even use AOC herself for this argument. She said when she was talking about impeachment, like why fight for something that is likely to fail, she said a few reasons. Sometimes it gets members on the record so people can make excuses later. Sometimes these votes create real political pressure that forces developments. Sometimes we vote for the historical record to let future generations know we did everything we could. Are you doing everything you could for Medicare for all, AOC? Is Sam Seder doing everything he can for Medicare for all by kissing the Democratic establishment's ass? And here's a moment in the debate that I want you guys to see, because Sam Seder saw a clip of my speech at the Forced to Vote rally, and I'll show you what clip it was. But here, look at this.
Well, I think, frankly, what we need is more power. I have a different sense of than yours as to the power of the left. For instance, okay, now look, I was not one of those people who slammed the people who went out to protest on the Capitol steps about the force the vote. There wasn't many people there. I saw one clip from it where someone is mentioning my name as being part of why this doesn't happen. And I can tell you this: if Sam Seder is the obstacle to getting Medicare for all. You perceive Sam Cedar as the obstacle to getting Medicare.
I don't know why this guy Virgil finds that so funny, because it is true. And Briahna Joy Gray goes on to say, like, defending that he is an obstacle. If he's somebody with a big platform, he can affect the way a lot of people think, because a lot of people are trusting him and trusting his opinion. And that's especially true if they're only listening to him or TY or other people who agree with him. Like, it's just confirmation bias, and you're not hearing from other people. And so you're blinded from objectivity. So Sam Cedar and Virgil, you guys find this funny, but it's true. Sam Cedar is an obstacle, and Sam Cedar was referring to my speech because I'm the one. I was the only one who mentioned him by name in my speech. Check this out.
You know what Sam Cedar said a couple weeks ago?
Here we go.
He said that universal health care would take 12 years at least to pass. According to a 2009 Harvard study, 45,000 Americans die every year from lack of health care. According to a PNHAP poll, 56 of adult Americans reported medical financial problems in 2019. You can ask him for questions about After the massive increase in healthcare loss as a result of shutdowns by the pandemic, the number of people who die every year from lack of healthcare is expected to increase. But let's assume that 45,000 deaths per year. That is more than 500,000 Americans that will die after 12 years. In the richest country that the world has ever seen, that is unacceptable. But that urgency doesn't seem to strike Sam Cedar to take action outside of electoral politics.
Yeah. So someone else called it out there too. He's like, it's because he has health care. If his health care got taken away, and if his money got taken away, and he had to live like the average American who lives paycheck to paycheck, then he would feel that sense of urgency. Would he be singing the same tune that he is right now? Or is he going to hold on to his pride and his ego of hating Jimmy Dore and just be against it just because Jimmy Dore's name is just because people are attaching Jimmy Dore's name to it? I mean, Jimmy Dore's name doesn't have to be attached to it. And that's the whole argument that Briahna Joy Gray is talking about. Ignore whoever came up with the idea. Just focus on the idea itself. And Sam Cedar refused to do that because he didn't want to make the Democratic Party look bad. It's the Democratic Party that's making themselves look bad because they're not fighting for working class people. But let's hear what Briahna Joy Gray said in response to Sam Cedar not believing that he's an obstacle.
Know where he lives.
I am sitting in front of IKEA panels right now.
I know where he lives. I'm going to drop his address in the chat, and you can go rush that studio right now, and we can get Medicare for all right now.
I mean, I just think that we don't have the power that's there, and I think the danger, what you can lose in trying to use a phone as a hammer is you can break the phone.
Can I just address that? I want to take that good faith version of that argument that you just made. Like, really, truly, I want to drill down on this. This is serious stuff. Okay, the argument being made to you, Sam, is not that you individually hold all the power in the world, but that there is whatever left media structure we have is fairly limited, and both you and the Young Turks are take up an enormous percentage of that left media space.
I think Jimmy has a bigger audience than I do.
Yeah, he does, but that's not the point. You and Young Turks together take up an enormous amount of that space. Jimmy has his own platform.
You have no idea what their perspective on this was.
Okay, and then in terms of beyond the left media space, who else has influence in the left media? Well, there's unions and there's the DSA, right? And so if
2/3. I mean, Young Turks takes up, I don't know, probably 80% of the left. I don't know how big they are, but obviously they're the main player. If Young Turks comes out against an idea, if you come out against an idea,
I didn't.
or you decline to support it, and Sam, I think you're not being entirely honest about the kinds of things that were said on your show, even if you personally didn't say that. I'm not holding you responsible for them, but the Sam Seder universe was extremely antagonistic toward Force the Vote.
I think it was, frankly, for me personally, I was antagonistic to the idea that it very quickly, very, very quickly turned into AOC is a sellout. She's a fraud. She's
that's
not
fine, Sam, but I'm sitting.
But wait a second, Bri, you asked what the cost is? The cost is that.
So what's wrong? So I'll stop there. Otherwise, we're going to be watching like a whole lot of minutes of that debate. But if that's AOC doing that to herself, she did that to herself because she wasn't fighting for Medicare for all. If she was actually fighting for it, people wouldn't be calling her a sellout. She's doing it to herself. And the only thing we can do to try to stop her from being a sellout, because she's doing the bidding of Nancy Pelosi, who does the bidding of corporations, thus AOC does the bidding of corporations. The only thing we can do is call that out, make people conscious of that, of how AOC is being a sellout, so that people can stop relying on politicians to do all the work for them. And so people finally take action for themselves. And that's the point of this great unmasking. Is people are realizing that these people who a lot of people thought were heroes, who a lot of people thought were fighting for them, are turning out to be nothing but phonies. And that we need to stop relying on them and to start relying on ourselves. So remember that no one is going to come save you, because they're not the heroes. They're not the heroes of your story. You're the hero of your story. You're the one that's going to take action and influence other people so that they can be heroes for themselves. Thank you guys so much for watching. Like this video, share this video, and subscribe to this channel. Stay informed.